This is the Spirit and Wellness Show. News and information from a higher perspective. With your host, Harry Wilkinson. Yes, hello. Welcome to the Spirit and Wellness Show. My name is Harry Wilkinson, and this is the show where we take a look at the days and weeks events, happenings in the world, politics, the media, international news, technology and environmental news, all of it, all of these things that we interact with on a daily basis, and we take a look at it from a higher perspective. Because, after a week of hearing stories that can really be button-pushing type stories that can often overwhelm or just kind of bum you out, it's important to reframe. It's important to really reconnect with what's really going on here. So that's my approach. It's something I do sharing with others, but it's something I do for me to keep me focused on the fact and the truth of who and what we really are, which is divine mind, which is oneness, and the belief that we are separate, the belief in separation, as the Course in Miracles talks about, is what creates these illusions that we all play in. And when I say play, that's what I mean. We create these illusions kind of like holograms that seem very real. They feel real. And as I said, they push our buttons. But when we reach a stage where we can recognize what's going on, recognize that these are stories that we're telling about ourselves, and they are not the truth of us, but are simply illusions. Can't seem to find a better word than that. Illusions that help us to remember who and what we really are. So many times the headlines in the news will reflect the stories we're telling about ourselves and the illusions we're creating for us to play in them and remember who we are. And so that's kind of what this show is about. Also, we deal with wellness topics and all of that kind of thing. So we're going to do about that. We're going to do that today. This is the beginning of the season, the holiday season. Actually, I guess Thanksgiving was the beginning, but so off we go for another holiday season, with all of the shopping and all of the parties and all of the fun and all of the angst and anxiety and everything that goes with it. So we're going to talk about ways that you can manage your stress during this period of time. And we're also going to talk about, ways to stay centered. And we're going to look at, different approaches that you can use to kind of deal more effectively with the holiday season and not let it do you in. So we'll talk about that, and we'll talk about the a little bit about the season of Advent, which is something that Catholics are observing this month, and other I think other denominations of Christianity also celebrate Advent. So we may get a chance to talk a little bit about that. But I think it's important to, as we usually do at the top of the show, talk about whatever news headlines are sort of dominating the conversation these days. And, well, the one that's dominating most conversations, and certainly the one that is resonating for me right now, are the two non-indictments, the indictments that didn't happen, that many people are finding upsetting, and which has certainly kicked off yet another debate about police and about race. So, just to clarify, in case you don't know, earlier in the week, a grand jury finally came to their decision not to indict the police officer who shot the young man in Ferguson, Michael Brown, and killed him, an unarmed kid. And then on the heels of that, which, by the way, kicked off, of course, quite a backlash of protests, some of which were violent, but for the most part, they were not. There were incidences of fires and things like that. But for the most part, the protests were peaceful and were echoed throughout the country. Right here where I am in D.C., they had them in New York, in all across the country, and even across the globe. The idea that a police officer is able to, what appeared to be undue force and basically murdering an unarmed boy. Many people found this upsetting, and many people found it to be yet another example of how minorities are having their rights sort of trampled by law enforcement. How minorities are subjugated, I guess is a word that you can use. So right on the heels of that, then another grand jury in New York made the decision not to indict a white officer who put a chokehold on an unarmed African American man, which resulted in his death. The man was a big, obese man, and apparently was selling loose cigarettes, which is, I guess, against the law in New York. And the police were trying to arrest him for that. He did not want to be arrested. And then, if you see the video, it's quite astounding. I don't know how many officers came seemingly out of nowhere to drag this man to the ground while he's telling them that he can't breathe. They have him in a chokehold. This is a man who had quite a number of health problems, including asthma. And due to their over exuberance, the man died. And this announcement sparked even more protests in New York and around the world. And it's bringing to light things that I guess a lot of people have not really understood, or um, maybe didn't take particularly seriously, or in some cases denied. The tension that exists between African Americans in many cities and the police officials that are supposed to be there to protect them, but more often than not are often, well, let's just say that they can be um, bullying. That's the right word I want to use. So it's be, begun another discussion on race, and particularly challenging to our president, the first African American president, who has had several of these incidents. Um, and of course, whenever he speaks about them, he's criticized roundly for speaking about something that ought to be spoke about. But he's still speaking about these things. It's just that the tone may be a little bit different. Back in 2008, um, there was an incident uh, with the professor, Henry Louis Gates, very famous Harvard professor. He does a show on DNA and on PBS, and if you remember what happened there, the Cambridge, Massachusetts police came to his house because he had locked himself out of his house. And an officer arrived to investigate and ultimately arrested Henry Louis Gates, for which the president criticized him, and of course he was denounced by people who don't want to hear what's going on. But anyway, then there was the Trayvon Martin killing, in which he said, if I had a son, he'd look like Trayvon. That's true, but that apparently was too much race talk. So now, rather than making a big speech, he's sort of making the rounds and talking about these things. And Attorney General Holder is launching investigations to these things. But again, this is a story that we're telling about ourselves and race. It's a story about a belief in separation. It's a story about a race of people trying to overcome deep-seated beliefs, attitudes, and oppression. That's the story we're telling. That's the story we're involved in. And so when we create these incidents, that garner attention from a lot of people, again, it's an invitation. It's a opportunity to remember who and what we are. And if you look in closely enough, you'll see that, and no pun intended here, the situations aren't black and white. There's an awful lot of connectedness involved. One interesting thing that came out of this was a Twitter campaign called #CrimingWhileWhite, which was launched, I guess, last Thursday, and has just gone off the charts. basically what it is are white people who are tweeting about incidents they've had with the police where they were um, let go, where they got away with various crimes. For instance, a white drunk driver given only a speeding ticket, a man who, after shoving a police officer, was told to go home and sleep it off. And to me, it was very heartening to see the support that people were getting. And these are white people who are basically saying, "Yes, we understand. Yes, we get it. Um, we see what's going on. We get it. We're not denying it." Now, interestingly enough, there was reaction to it negatively from some in the black community who are perceiving it as a way that white people are saying, "Hey, look what I got away with." And I guess they're seeing it as more of a mocking kind of thing rather than a confessional, which is really what I think it's supposed to be. And I really think it is what people are doing when they post these things. And I think it's quite amazing. Nothing this has never happened. Nothing like this has ever happened when these incidents have occurred. Whether we're talking about the Gates incident or Trayvon Martin or any of the other racial incidents or racially toned incidents that have occurred over the years. To have a group of white people, not just a group, but um, huge numbers of white people coming out and saying, "We understand. Yes, this isn't fair. I got special treatment because of my skin color. I didn't get shot for selling cigarettes, so forth and so on." I really believe that that's an amazing moment, quite frankly, of understanding and recognition. Um, and I think that African Americans have to sensitive. I understand being sensitive about that, but I think they really have to put that in perspective because this is a remarkable thing. Uh, so they've countered with something called hashtag Alive While White, which I'm not exactly sure what those tweets are about, but maybe just reflections on um, being black in the country. I'm not exactly sure what those are about, but I just think that. And full disclosure, because here I am on the radio, you can't see me. I am an mixed race African American man, so I do have skin in the game. There goes another pun, if you will. So I do know uh, from firsthand experience what this is about, and this hashtag criming while white is also about firsthand experience. People sharing those experiences and starting to talk about it. And that's the beauty of our technology today, which allows these things to happen, which allows these conversations to begin. So, yeah, this is what these stories are about. This is what we create these things for these moments of remembering who and what we really are, our connectedness, our the truth of ourselves, which is beyond anything as absurd as skin color or even your body. Because well, from a spiritual perspective, we are not our bodies at all. Our bodies serve us for various things, and then we let them go, or we change them. And it's interesting that we have chosen to create bodies that look different, and then argue about that. Uh, all part of the hologram, I guess. Well, I think it's time to move on right now. I'm sure we will be back to this topic before long. But I do want to get to some stress management techniques that may be helpful for you this time of year. Whatever it is that you celebrate, if you celebrate, and even if you don't celebrate anything particularly, um, just the basic mood and activity of things can be a little bit grinding. So, perhaps the most important thing, I think, in keeping centered is to check your schedules and, you know, really think about what you can do and what you can't do. Because, one big reason you feel overwhelmed and stressed out is because uh, you're trying to do everything. And you may be trying to please a lot of people at the same time. And that may lead to taking on more than you need to or should. So, you need to kind of focus on you. And breathing and meditation is the best way to do that. And we've talked about breath techniques here, the breathing in, holding for 7, and letting out for 7, that kind of thing. Uh, Breath walking is also a great technique. Doing, mindful breathing while you walk can bring you energy and healing. So, as far as your schedules are concerned, you may have to turn down some requests, some invitations, and so forth and so on, and you shouldn't feel bad about that because you can't do everything. And you should then make your choices on what you're going to do according to what you enjoy, according to what within you strikes a chord, and make sure that you keep some me time so that you can do meditation, you can do breathing, you can keep in touch with yourself, let your thoughts and feelings go. So, you might do some morning meditation or some morning yoga or in the evening, whatever seems to do the best for you. And, if you have time off, as many of us do during the holiday season, you have some days off, you can think about a book you want to read, maybe a project you'd like to work on, that kind of thing. Some people like massages and that sort of thing. That can work, I guess, for some people, but I think it's more important rather than to go to a spa and get massage, which the process of which itself can be quite stressful. I think just having that me time probably really helps to refocus you and um, keep you whole, calm, relaxed, centered, all of that stuff. That's what you really need to do during this season so that you can interact with everything that's going to be going on and you can interact from a healthy perspective. Just like we take this perspective on the news, we take that step back and realize that these are creations we're making to uh, help us remember who we are. Same thing for things that are going on in your personal life. You are creating it all. And so you're in charge. You get to take the energy from things that you want to take energy from, and you can show great appreciation for those things you've created that you really like. That's what it's all about. And in your meditation, you can really do that. You can really focus on those issues. So that's some part of our stress management. We'll talk about more things that you can do. But schedules and time for yourself. That's a good start, particularly early on when you're starting to come up with your schedules. It's harder to change your schedule once you're in the middle of the month. So that's why I think it's probably important to start out with that. All right, moving on now. We'll talk about Advent because this is, and I'm not as familiar with, as I say, this isn't a religious program. I just talk about different religions and what they're celebrating. Of course, we have Hanukkah coming up on the 16th of December, so we'll talk about that probably next week. But this is the second Sunday of Advent. Advent happens right after Thanksgiving, and it's the 4 Sundays before the Christmas holiday. So this is the second Sunday of Advent, and there's 2 more Sundays before the 25th, which is, of course, Christmas Day. And a lot of Christian churches apparently use this as a time of preparation and expectation, and it's really about the celebrating of the nativity of Jesus. The whole story of the manger and all of that. Advent is a version of the word Adventus, which means coming. So it's about the coming of Christmas. It's about the coming of Jesus, even. And interesting. I'm looking at the roots of this word Adventus, and Adventus is Latin, but it's a translation of a Greek word, parousia, which is used to refer to the second coming of Christ. So Advent anticipates the coming of Christ from 2 different perspectives. The season offers the opportunity to share in the ancient longing for the coming of the Messiah. So they're celebrating the birth of Christ and being alert or looking for his second coming. Interesting. I never knew that. At all. So a lot of the celebrations, like there's an Advent calendar, which I've heard, friends of mine, have remembrances of that as a child, where each day in the calendar had, I think, a little gift or a little candy or something. There's an Advent wreath and daily devotional prayers. All of this in preparation for Christmas. There's readings and teachings, I guess, that go on. Again, it's a preparation for not so much even Jesus' birth, but more his return. That's really seems to be what Advent is hoping for. Fascinating, just fascinating. I think we'll talk more about Advent in coming shows, because there's a lot here. There really is a lot here. Of course, there's carols and songs and the famous Handel's Messiah, which the choirs are singing at this time. And some denominations practiced fasting at this time. That's interesting. Kind of like Lent in the spring. that Catholics observe. Very interesting. So maybe we'll talk more about that if we have a chance next week. But for now, our time has come to an end. So stay calm, centered, be a little selfish, take some time for yourself. Have a great week.